person that I trained with was a personal coach, and he had a client who was a cardiothoracic surgeon. And he said he needs some help on his professional speeches. Can you help him? And I said, absolutely. And he was the head of the Cardiothoracic Surgeon and Cardiologist Guild. I did not know this, but they don't like each other very much. They're kind of like the Jets and the Sharks of the heart. They are very much at odds, and they feel like everybody's taking their business, and this one's a hack and that one's a hack. So he had to kind of write this speech that sort of brought everyone together. And we did that. And then he showed me these 2 medical devices that he had invented, that he was invited to an investor conference in New York for. And he said, can you work on these pitches? I have 5 minutes for each company. And I said, well, I've never worked for a startup, but a story is a story, so why not? And we poured months of work into these 2 pitches.
In a corporate world where all employees have great leaders with no egos that create fun cultures where people can do their best work, the employees and companies thrive while doing great things for the customers, themselves, and each other.
Well, we know that rarely happens. I'm Jeff Palacio. I have been a leader for over 40 years for every t-shirt size company, from small 16 employees to extra large over 1 million. Please join me while I interview outstanding leaders that will share stories of great leadership and not so great. It will help you become a better leader while poking fun about all the crazy shit that happens in corporate America.
Hi, I'm Joe Deshawn, and welcome to the Corporate Couch with Jeff Palacio. Today's episode is brought to you by Palacio and Partners, providing turnkey podcast creation, hosting, production, promotion, and related creative resources for you and your business. Today, Jeff is interviewing Donna Griffit. Donna is a corporate storyteller and best-selling author of Sticking to My Story, The Alchemy of Storytelling for Startups. Donna has worked globally for over 20 years with Fortune 500 companies, startups, and investors in a wide variety of industries. She has consulted and trained clients in over 30 countries, helping them create, edit, and deliver verbal and written presentations, pitches, and messages. Through her guidance, clients have raised over $2 billion. She is also a communication coach for Stanford's Graduate School of Business, helping the leaders of tomorrow become stellar communicators. You can learn more about Donna at donnagriffit.com. Let's listen as Jeff talks to Donna.
Donna, welcome to the Corporate Couch this afternoon.
So great to be here, Jeff.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Dr. Cindy McGovern introduced us. You guys are in some authoress.
We belong to the authoress
Power
group.
Women's Speaker Author Group. Yeah.
Author group, yes.
Yes.
So we are on there with our books and sharing lots of ideas and inspo. So she was kind enough to connect us.
Yeah, no, it was great. She connected me to like probably 10 of you. It's all fantastic. So yeah,
she lined up your whole
book. Now it's out to
season.
October based on Cindy. I guess I need a referral fee for her or something to give her.
There you go. Fabulous.
Excited to talk to you. Just as we were chatting before I pressed record, just the pivots in your career and what you're doing is fantastic. The whole storytelling aspect is so good and so important in today's world, not just for entrepreneurs and people that are pitching for investments, but I think for everyone involved in almost any occupation.
It's so important, and I think it's sometimes scary. So in the same way, we don't want to look at budgets because it's scary. We don't want to look at like pending pivots because it's scary. Mm-hmm. And it's better to just ignore it and maybe it'll go, or like toothaches, maybe it'll just go on its own. Right. And usually you just need to take action. And then it's not even as bad as you thought it was, but it's tackling this thing that in your head and your mind gets big, but we can't just ignore it.
Right.
And pivots are a big part of life, especially as an entrepreneur, especially as a business owner.
Yeah. Well, I think, with the changing landscape of technology and what AI is doing today, it's really important.
Yes.
So,
yes. And I'm working hard at that now. And my husband's constantly on my case, like, okay, when are you going to do this? When are you going to do that? When I'm like, yes, I know you're right. But it's just getting there and getting it done. And I already took my first big AI step. I created an AI version of myself to analyze investor pitch decks, score them, and give them notes. Because people are always like, well, can you just take a look at my deck and give me some feedback? And, they don't realize that's what I do for a living.
That's
and,
your business.
It's not just like a 2-second and then look, because when I look at things, I get very into it and into the weeds.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, if I can now take that part of myself, train OpenAI to do that according to my parameters and have people upload their decks, get a score, get guidelines to improve it. And then some people are hacking the system and they're like using deck. It's called deck check. So they're using deck check to like 5, 6, 7, 8 times until they get the score they want. And then they move on with their merry life.
Right. Yeah, I love that.
But it's all good. I'm happy. I'm really happy that I can use AI to provide that guidance.
Donna, you're kind of open out there in terms of, social media, LinkedIn. Obviously, it's part of what you do. But even though people that know you fairly well, what one thing would surprise them about you?
That probably I'm a lot more scared of change than they would know. Because I always seem to be ahead of the curve and I always seem to be doing bold things and making bold moves. But that doesn't come without a share of absolute sweat, terror, denial. I always joke that, so my husband, who's also an entrepreneur, is like, he's the CEO, I'm the COO. So it's his job to throw out something big and scary and for me to go, no!
Right.
And then start to process it and start to act on it. And it can be anything from moving to moves for the family to business. And it's usually business. But I think it's okay to be scared. And I wrote a piece a couple years ago called Brace and Embrace for AI. And that was like in the very early days.
Right.
And there's so much uncertainty that it's impossible to not feel scared. And I think also the world right now is kind of a scary place in a lot of different realms. But at the same time, it's all how you can shift your focus and say, okay, I'm scared and not but, because but negates it. And it's okay to feel that fear. And what am I going to do with that and in spite and because of it? I think it always that play between the in spite of and because of.
Right.
If we move and we get ourselves into motion, that's where we win.
Right. Well, it's interesting that you said that about yourself, because obviously one of the things you do is help people in public speaking and storytelling. And, with the, people fear death and public speaking, right? It's the two.
More. Seinfeld tells the joke that it's, people would rather be in the grave than delivering the eulogy.
It's a great, it's a great line. Yeah.
And it's, by the way, I mean, public speaking doesn't scare me. And I always tell, and it's funny, I should remember this for myself more often. I tell my Stanford students, I work at GSB as a communications coach, that excitement and fear are basically the same thing. Excitement has better branding. So if you can flip the switch and say, oh, I'm excited about the change, or I'm excited about this speech I'm giving, or I'm excited about this new, it definitely makes a difference, because both are these adrenaline responses. It's just a question of what we tag it, what we give the meaning to.
Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah. Obviously we're going to talk more about what you do, but I know for myself, early on in my career, I knew it was very important that, to have great written communication and be a great speaker. And I always felt you could never get enough training on it, honestly. I mean, obviously people are natural and all that, but, to get formally trained and learn the little tips and tricks of the trade is very important.
Very important.
Yeah.
Even for like the seasoned professionals. And sometimes the best speakers are those that are humble enough to know that what they're not great at and what they need help with.
Right.
So if they're great speakers, it doesn't mean they're great at creating the content that they speak about, or vice versa. Some people are absolutely brilliant, and watching them is basically equating to watching a bowl of oatmeal cool. Right. It's painful. So different people need to tweak different things. And that's the difference between talents and skills. some people are just born great speakers, born with a certain talent. Some people can hone it over the years. It's not going to mean like they're going to be the world's best speaker, but definitely they can improve.
Right. Well, I always held Steve Jobs in high regard in terms of he was a great speaker. Anybody else come to mind when you kind of
Well,
tell?
but what's funny about Steve Jobs is when he started out and you watch the early videos of him in the very early days, he wasn't that great.
Right.
He was okay.
Yeah.
But he was wearing like these brown corduroy jackets and he was kind of clunky, very insurance-y looking, not somebody that you'd look at to be one of the greatest visionaries of our time. But he honed it. I write about it in my book. There's a book called Becoming Steve Jobs. He worked at this relentlessly, just like everything he did. Before every pitch, it was just like endless rehearsals. So it looks effortless, but a lot of effort went into making it effortless.
Yeah.
So I have mad respect for people like that. I mean, when you think of great speakers, who comes to mind? Clinton, Obama, Gandhi. And then, there's a lot of people out there you may not agree with, but are still great speakers.
Right.
I have to say that Trump and Netanyahu, both in their way, are phenomenal speakers. Controversial, yes, but they both know exactly what to say to the audience they're speaking to.
Right.
Without a lot of pomp and circumstance, they just touch.
Right.
And that's, I think, the biggest miss that people miss when they are trying to speak. They think it's about, being really smart and using big words and being and that can come across very condescending if you're speaking to an audience that just is like whatever. And early in my days when I was training people on presentation skills, my then boss, Brad Boyer, who I learned so much from, he told about this time that he gave a workshop or a sales pitch for Walmart. And he was working with someone, and like first the guy that he was training. So it was somebody who was going to sell to Walmart. And the guy he was training showed up in a 3-piece suit, fancy equipment, brought everyone together. And their meeting room was a warehouse, basically.
Right.
And fancy computer, fancy that. And then someone raised their hand and he said, yes. He's like, I guess you didn't buy that suit at Walmart, Emma. Is that what we're paying for here for whatever it was they're selling? And then, he went back, scaled it back. The next meeting he came dressed just like they were, with slides that you drew. Once upon a time, we had the what were they called?
Transparencies.
Yes, foils, transparencies.
Yeah.
And he gave he gave a presentation and it came across very, very differently.
Right.
So you just need to know who it is you're speaking to and adjust your language, adjust your style, adjust your eye level too.
Yeah. Donna, where did you grow up?
So I was born in Maryland, on the East Coast, and I moved to Israel for several years, and I've kind of been back and forth. I'm a hybrid, so I haven't been in DC in a long time, even visiting. But then I lived in New York. I got my master's at NYU, and I was there for 6 years when Manhattan was like the center of the universe. It was before the days of Brooklyn. We still made fun of the bridge and tunnel people.
Right.
And it would be like, you need a passport to get out of Manhattan. Nobody would go anywhere but Manhattan. But today, Brooklyn's like the place to be, I know.
Right.
Or Queens even, like go to Queens. Really.
Yeah. I grew up an hour from New York City, and I hated all the people from Manhattan. You say I lived upstate. Like, I live an hour away.
Where was
Albany's
it? Westchester?
Upstate, and Syracuse and Buffalo.
No, definitely Westchester to us was upstate.
Yeah, I know. It was like, what?
I mean, Washington Heights was pretty much upstate.
Right. I love that.
Oh my gosh.
What was fun for you growing up besides dressing up as a clown and getting paid for it at a birthday party?
Oh my gosh, you really did do your homework, didn't you? So what was fun for me growing up? I was a voracious reader. I read a lot, and my girls now read a lot, and that to me is just an utter joy. I guess, just being in a time where screens were like, if we would watch our shows, my brothers and sister and I, on Saturday night, like Punky Brewster and Silver Spoons and things like that, that it sometimes would get delayed from the football. Like that was basically our brush with screens.
Right.
Everything else was being outside.
Right.
I remember fireflies on the East Coast. I miss those.
Yeah.
We don't have them here on the West Coast. But I was always looking for ways to start businesses. So the clown business, when I was 7 and my sister's 4-year-old birthday, I identified a pain, just like entrepreneurs do, that there weren't like really good in affordable entertainment for birthday parties. So I made myself that, and I scaled the business. I started off with like the prototype, where there's a picture of me with like red lipstick, drawn hearts, and a little heart kind of jumper. And then I got my mom, aka VC, to invest $50, and I went to Sears and got like a Halloween costume and makeup and a wig.
Clown
and
nose.
I had a clown nose, and I went from being Hearts the Clown to Rainbow the Clown. And I had a marketing budget where I mimeographed, oh my God, I'm really dating myself here, flyers, and hung them at schools. And I we broke even after 2 engagements.
There you go.
I didn't know about dilution clauses then, so unfortunately my VC continues to reap the dividends, but that's okay. She deserves it.
That's funny. That's funny. It looks like you went to undergraduate Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and
I did.
Was so it was such an interesting. I don't know what you started with when you enrolled there, but you graduated with a sociology / anthropology degree as well as theater studies. So talk about that decision and choice.
So sociology and anthropology were together as the degree.
Yeah.
So I was kind of this weird kid that knew from the age of 16 what I wanted to get my master's degree in, like what I wanted to do professionally. I had always been into acting. I had always been into people. And something in me at a very young age knew that trying to become an actor, as much as I loved it, was not particularly realistic, because to hit it big, the chances are very slim, even if I was Meryl Streep level. And I didn't want to be waiting tables at the age of 30, which, by the way, when I was studying acting along with my master's in New York, I had several classmates who were waiting tables and still waiting for their big break. Some of them still are to this day. So I needed to find something, though, that satisfied that act hunger as much as acting did. And at first, when I was 16, I heard about this thing called drama therapy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like somebody put together my 2 great loves. And I started exploring, and there were 3 programs that you could study. One was in San Francisco, one was in Concordia, Canada, and one was at NYU. It was a master's program. I traveled there, I think, in my junior year of college, and met with the director of the program. And I also met with the program in San Francisco just to check it out. And I knew that was where I wanted to be. And I got accepted to do my master's there. And like literally 10 days after handing in my last paper for my bachelor's degree, I moved to New York. I was 23 at the time. Things in Israel are a little bit later because you go to the army. So I didn't start my first degree until I was 20. But it's 3 years, so I made up for lost time. And then I moved to New York. And then a year later, 9/11 happened. And I was living literally down the street from there. And I had just started a clinical internship at Bellevue Hospital with homeless mentally ill men. And I was displaced from my home at the same time because we were all evacuated. And it was very interesting to kind of observe the dynamics of the city and of working with people that what I realized then that mental illness is a lack of filters oftentimes, because some of these men were saying, I knew this was going to happen. I could hear things going on in the past few months with planes circling and things. I knew something like this was going to happen. And then I realized, like, who are we to tell them you're delusional? Maybe they were hearing frequencies that because we have the filters to filter out every single noise and every single thing happening, they don't. And that's what overwhelms the system and creates mental illness. And it was just like this wow realization that who's crazy and who's sane.
Right.
How do we determine that? It was a very interesting time, to say the least. And 9/11 was a very pivotal time in my life, I think, for a lot of us. And I was just speaking to someone about this today. I don't think if you weren't there to actually see it, if I hadn't seen it outside my own window and been evacuated, I would have even believed it could have happened,
Right.
because it is just so far-fetched. But so after as I was doing my internship, I realized that the paid opportunities for a drama therapist, even after graduation and internship, were basically that of a starving artist, and I would be making more waiting tables. And I'm like, yeah, that's not why I didn't go study acting. I got to find something that I can build on. And I was taking sort of a post-grad class in training in group dynamics. And one of my professors there mentioned that she had a friend that traveled the world and gave workshops for people, motivational speeches. And I was just like, ah, sometimes you have those moments, like the choir singing
Yeah.
moments, like, and I was like, how do I sign up for that? And I started investigating, and NYU actually had a continuing education program postmaster in training and organizational development. So I registered for that right away, started taking the courses, sent my resume to the first place that I saw on Craigslist, which looked the same back then as it does today. And I sent it, and it ended up being to Brad, to Boyer Communications Group. And he hired me. He said the one prerequisite beyond the interview and the resume was that he needed to see me on stage. He said, because he had hired people before and their stage presence ended up being like, on paper, it was great. So I said, I actually am in a off-Broadway play that's opening next week. You're welcome to come see me there. He did. I was playing Deirdre, an Irish girl during a World War II. I know that the red hair does give me the Irish look. And that was it. And so that really launched my career in this. I was hired to be a trainer for presentation skills, business writing skills. I got to travel the globe and always like tack on a few days to see the country that I went to. But I also got to learn about the countries through how people communicated, which is a true gift. And it also showed me there's this universal connection between us all. We all struggle with how to express ourselves. We all struggle with those butterflies, whether they're excitement or fear. We all think we're being judged. Like, it's breaking past that point of like, you have something to say to the world. Let me help you clarify it. Let me polish the diamond that you are, and then, sound your mighty yop. And it's amazing to see how when people can overcome, whether it's fear, whether it's block, whether it's over-informing, whether it's whatever it is, how they just burst forward into this incredible, like, wow.
Yeah, so I saw that on your website that you got this job through Craigslist. I'm not familiar with Brad Boyer, but obviously he was a key critical figure in your life. But he seemed to be a great mentor and an expert in communication. So talk a little bit about your learning process with him, and was there any other things you did to learn how to be a better, a communicator in terms of being able to instruct in written and public speaking?
I had the natural knack for being up in front of people, and
the performer,
getting the performer, but also the teaching and the training piece. So that was easy. The part that I really needed to learn was listening to their messages, which were usually extremely technical, extremely financial. Like, I worked with insurance companies, I worked with chip companies like Intel. I mean, all these, I called it chips to chips to chips. We had silicon chips, potato chips. We worked with Frito-Lay, chocolate chips. We worked with Hershey's, and back then it was Kraft, but they are now Mondelez. And it's learning to listen to a message, understand beneath the veneers of all of their technobabble, what are they really trying to say? Helping them get to the core of that so that they can better explain it to their audience, because I don't come from their backgrounds. So if I get it, anyone can get it. It's just a question of how you tell it better. So it was how to deconstruct a message and then reconstruct it.
Right.
And that only came from hands-on experience. And I've been doing this for over 20 years. And now I can listen to someone's pitch, and within 30 seconds, my brain goes, here's your story. But it took a long time. And I joke that I'm Donna GPT and my brain is an LLM, but in a way it is, because LLMs, large language models, train on massive amounts of data, and they aggregate all that data and then output whatever message or whatever deliverable, whether it's an image, whether it's text, like with ChatGPT. And that's kind of what I do, because I have all these points of reference from all the years of different startups and different industries I've worked with. And it all kind of connect the dots. And then, oh, okay, here's what you're trying to say, right? Oh my God, where'd you do that? How'd you do that? I'm like, I don't know, but it just,
Right.
Is it accurate? And then we work through it. But that's a gift that I'm so fortunate to have been able to discover. And it's like, I guess it's the gift that was there that I didn't even know about, but then it got honed and polished. It's like a muscle. We're all born with muscles. Some people have a natural capacity for upper arm strength or for leg strength or for endurance, and then they hone that.
Right.
And they train with it. So I have this capacity to understand very technical, heavy, complex things and break it down into simple, powerful messages. And it gets better and better over time as I continue to work with companies. Every time it improves the machine.
Any funny stories of clients doing their presentations, whether naturally or intentionally funny, or stuff that happened?
So many. I mean, it's like, there's more funny things, like anecdotes around when things that happened along the way. So I gave a workshop in Cairo once, and I got the days confused, and I landed at 4 a.m. on the day I was supposed to give the workshop. I thought it was the following day. And at 8 a.m. they're calling the hotel room. They're like, hi, are you coming? And I'm like, luckily I was already up. And I was just like, give me a few minutes. And they're like, can we pick you up? And I'm like, yes. And thankfully it was just like down the road.
Right.
Down the road though, in Cairo, is crazy because the traffic is insane. Traffic lights are a mere suggestion. And it was just crazy, but it turned out fine. And we ended up, my mom came with me. She'd often travel with me to, interesting places. This was before I was married, and we had dinner in the middle of the Nile at this beautiful place. It was all white. It looked like something out of Arabian Nights. There was another time where I was in China, and I was going to meet someone from one of my workshops that had taken a workshop of mine, and it was Independence Day, and there was no way to get anywhere, and I had no idea how to communicate. This was before the Olympics there, and English was just not spoken. And I'm like running to try to find what to do, where to go, how to find a subway station. I was walking around with my guidebook. This was before smartphones too. And I had no way to let her know that I was running late. And suddenly a motorcycle stops next to me, and he's like, moto taxi? This was also before Uber, by the way. And I'm like, okay, sure, why not? And I'm like, whatever. And I found myself zooming through the streets of Shanghai on the back of this motorcycle, not knowing the person, not knowing if this was legit or not. I got off, and of course I burned my leg on the exhaust, which it's called like a motorcycle tattoo, I think. And I paid the guy, and I was just like, how absolutely random. And then, I thought of it with Uber many years later when Uber first came out, like the audacity to get into someone's vehicle or on someone's vehicle, not knowing who they are. But like, even then it was before the rating system.
Right.
So these are all stories that just make up like the tapestry of us. And these are all stories, by the way, speaking of stories, that when you have these experiences, you can draw on and then bring to your pitches, bring to your speeches, bring to your presentations, and like connect the dots, because everybody in the audience will go, oh yeah, that reminds me of the time where I was in this country and I didn't speak the language. So how do you connect the dots between these things? There was one time I almost got in big trouble for taking the Lord's name in vain.
Are you drowning in boring corporate communications? Palacio and Partners is here to rescue you. We transform internal podcasts from snooze fest to must-listen content that actually connects your team and strengthens your culture. Imagine podcast episodes that make your employees laugh while staying informed. Our founder, Jeff Palacio, doesn't just create podcasts, he creates conversations that break through the noise. Whether you're a growing startup or a massive corporation, we turn your company's story into audio gold. Leadership becomes human. Remote teams feel connected. Your message cuts through the clutter. Palacio and Partners, where corporate communications gets a fun makeover. Let's make your podcast work harder than your email inbox ever could. Jeff is happy to share his insights on podcasting with you. You can contact him via LinkedIn or schedule a Zoom call via the link in the episode description.
There was one time I almost got in big trouble for taking the Lord's name in vain. I said something like, "Oh, Jesus, why aren't you listening to me?" Because I had a very naughty student in the class, and this was in Oregon, and that, like, time froze and everybody was staring at me, and I'm like, "I apologize. I didn't mean that." And then at the end of the workshop, somebody came up to me. He was a pretty senior guy, and he's like, "I had a great time in the workshop. It was wonderful, but I do have to tell you, I did put on the feedback report that you did take the Lord's name in vain." And I literally wanted the floor to open up and swallow me. And I said to Brad, "I blame you and all the other non-Jewish friends of mine that used, oh, Jesus, like it was just a frame of reference.
Right.
You know, I'm Jewish. I don't know. Saying it is." Oh my God. So
That's funny.
So lots of different moments
Yeah.
along the way.
Yeah. So you're doing what you love. It sounds like you have a great boss and Brad and a mentor in him and learning. What made you pivot out of Boyer Communications?
Necessity is the mother of all invention. 2008 came, and we remember that.
Yep.
And for those of you that don't, it wasn't a good year.
Yeah, big recession.
It was not. Oh yeah, and the recession, and we had an entire year of work canceled. All workshops down, everything, because the first thing that organizations cut in a time of uncertainty is travel,
training,
right. Non-essential training. So apparently learning how to present and sell and whatever is not imperative. Of course, tech companies look at the core tech. So, priorities, right? So I was thrust into this kind of like, oh my God, what do I do now? I've never had, this was my first job. And as it was, I was a subcontractor. So I worked for Brad, but as like an entity. I've worked for myself.
You were 1099 employee.
Well, it wasn't even a 1099. I'm an S corp.
Okay.
And he had us all incorporate and paid us as corporations.
Oh, wow.
Just because it was easier that way, which I completely get, because having the responsibility of employees, or I don't even know why we didn't do 1099s back then. We're talking early 2000s when I started. So I was just like, okay, what now? Do I get a job? We're in the middle of a recession. And then serendipity has a way, again, like just like I heard the professor say, I had a friend that's a moment, a serendipitous moment. So another serendipitous moment, I decided to study coaching and NLP, not the technical NLP, the neuro-linguistic programming, which is another way to free yourself from fears.
Tony Robbins is a big NLP advocate.
Tony Robbins, a lot of people in with that. And the person that I trained with was a personal coach, and he had a client who was a cardiothoracic surgeon. And he said he needs some help on his professional speeches. Can you help him? And I said, absolutely. And he was the head of the Cardiothoracic Surgeon and Cardiologist Guild. Now, I did not know this, but they don't like each other very much. They're kind of like the Jets and the Sharks of the heart. They are very much at odds, and they feel like everybody's taking their business, and this one's a hack and that one's a hack. So he had to kind of write this speech that sort of brought everyone together. And we did that. And then he showed me these two medical devices that he had invented, that he was invited to an investor conference in New York for. And he said, can you work on these pitches? I have 5 minutes for each company. And I said, this was 2009. And I said, well, I've never worked for a startup, but a story is a story. So why not? And we poured months of work into these two pitches. And I ended up going with him and presenting on his behalf because he's the kind of guy that could save 3 lives consecutively on the operating table, put him in front of a PowerPoint, and he was dead.
Right.
Literally, he wasn't, he was very doldrum in front of, and he just didn't feel comfortable, especially in giving it in English, which was not his first language. So I presented both of them, and then the other companies that were invited stood up to present, and they were shot down after 30 seconds. It was so bad. And they started getting like comments, and they couldn't even finish their pitch. And I felt so bad for them. And I'm like, why would they have this opportunity to present to a room of 80 something angel investors and not hire someone like me to prepare with them? And then I was like, wait a minute. And I started looking, and nobody was really owning the storytelling for startup space or communications for startups or startup pitching back then. And I was like, okay, this is my next audience. And then come the voices of, oh, startups aren't going to pay you. They don't have money. They don't need you. Luckily for me, I said, thank you for your concern, voices. And I went on and found a way. Our family, when we got married, my husband decided we needed a family crest, which he designed. And I'm like, well, if we're going to have a family crest, we have to have a logo in Latin. And the one I chose for us was, it's aut viam inveniam aut faciam, which is, I will either find a way or I will make a way.
Love it.
And that's very much apropos of entrepreneurs. It's like you either find a way to do it or you do it yourself. Right. So I started to offer my services as what I called sponsorship as a service. And I contacted all of there weren't a lot at that time yet, accelerators, pitch competitions. And I said, I'm happy to come work with your companies on their pitches and make sure they're great. I know you don't pay for things like this. That's fine. All you have to do is put my logo on as a sponsor and thank me at the event. Just mention my name in connection with the pitches. And at first it was like, oh, we only take sponsorship in form of money. And I'm like, okay. And then I'd get called in as a pinch pitcher, pinch hitter. Right. And like 3 days before, the pitches are horrific. And somebody's like, well, there's this woman that works with pitches and you should talk to her. And then I'd get an email and I'm like, oh, didn't we speak a few months ago? I'm happy to. And I came in and the pitches started to be really, really good. And then when they'd say, thank you, Donna, for people, who's this Donna? Who's Donna? And then it started to be like synonymous with startup pitches. And I started to get clients from that and referrals from that. And I built a name as like the mother of storytelling for startups. Not the mother of storytelling is Nancy Duarte. She's amazing. I love her, and her, she's like a role model to me. But for me, it's really about the startup space.
Right.
So that's how it started and why it started.
Any commonalities with these founders and entrepreneurs that, is there like one or two things that almost always you have to tell them? Because, we as humans, I mean, that's how stories were passed. It was all about storytelling, right? And,
yep.
I'm a big Seth Godin fan. One of the things I love that he said, no one ever remembers a bullet on a PowerPoint slide. And all my corporate experience, looking at market research studies, that market research studies are the worst presentations of all time. They see just how many things they can fit on one slide that you can't even see. So I'm just curious your experience.
I call those the eye bleed slides.
Yes.
You're just like, my eyes. No, why are you doing that? Why? So yes, there are a few commonalities. So one, if just to continue on the eye bleed slide, it's putting too bleeding much stuff on the slide. And why do people do that? Either they're afraid that the audience isn't going to get it, or they're afraid that they're going to forget something. So when we act out of fear, we end up creating exactly what we tried to avoid. So they put everything up there and then they end up reading it verbatim, right, while the audience sits writhing in pain. And then they look like they don't know their stuff, or they're boring. And it's like, why am I listening to this person and not just reading a recap? So too much stuff. It's the gift of knowing what to scale back on, what to trim. So that's one big one. Another one is, and I mentioned this earlier, not speaking to the right audience. If you're talking to an investor, you need to touch on their pain points and show them your audience's pain points to the place that will show them they'll make a lot of money. If you're speaking directly to an audience and trying to get them to buy from you, you're talking about their pain points or others like them. Right. If you're speaking to a potential partner, they need to see what the upside is for them and what's missing in their lives that you can complete. If you're speaking to a general audience, you need to hit the lowest common denominator that will interest anyone sitting there. It's all about the bottom line of any communication is right from your audience's perspective. Henry Ford said that the one secret to success is to be able to see your view of the world and someone else's too.
Right.
And that's not easy for us to do because we're so devoted to our path that what we really need to do is put ourselves in the seat, in the shoes of the person we're speaking to and think, well, if I didn't know what I knew and I was coming from their perspective, what would I want to know? What would I need answered? And that's where you start from. You start by answering your audience's question.
Yeah, I love that. Talk about your slide theory too. I mean, because you're right. I mean, if you throw a lot of words on a slide and read them verbatim, people can read faster than you can talk. So they're well ahead of you, and the boredom sinks in almost immediately. Kind of, what is your kind of slide philosophy?
So slides are important. It's a rare speaker that can speak without slides and keep an audience riveted, because humans have an attention span less than that of a goldfish. And Right. It's only gotten worse with screens because our brain is tempted to look at our screen all the time. And if they're looking at their screen, they're not listening to you. So if we can ground the audience by giving them like a visual stimuli that changes every few minutes or a few seconds, depending on what kind of length you have, but that's not overloaded with text, and that the visual informs, because it's different parts of our brain. We have the visual part, the auditory part, and the kinesthetic part that we take information in through. Now, when we read, people automatically think, oh, that's the visual part of the brain, right? No, it's the auditory, because it's the same place that we listen, because it's decoding language for us. We don't just see a word, and if we have English installed, it goes to that. If we have different languages that we don't read, it stays in the visual.
Right.
So if they are trying to listen to you auditory and they're trying to read all this text auditory, it's canceling you out. And that's not what you want when you're speaking. So visuals can give a whole other layer of messaging if they're done right. It's not just making things look pretty, it's giving meaning. And there's so many great tools now to create and hone visuals and make them look fantastic. You just need to know what to ask for. Right. You can do this with ChatGPT, and you can say, I would like an image that's very realistic of a woman and a man walking at sunset on the beach with a storm brewing, but they don't see it because it's behind. And like, you can get so specific with your prompt.
Yeah.
And then it'll generate, and you can say, great, now can you change it? Like, you can really tune your pictures.
Right.
So it's really utilizing all of those. But now kinesthetic can be involving them in the conversation. It can be having them try something, having them touch something. So if you can get them on all levels listening to you and interacting, then you're doing a great job.
Yeah. No, that's it. I love that advice. So I know you're a voracious reader growing up, and probably still are. But at what point did you decide, I'm going to write a book about what I know?
Wow.
Yeah,
I never in a million years thought that I would write a book. I didn't. And then for a long time, I was walking around and I'm like, yeah, that should be part of my book. That should be part of my book. And like I'd write a blog about a specific piece, and I'm like, that'll be a chapter of my book. That'll be like, I literally started putting together all of my writing pieces that had gone out and been published. And I'm like, yeah, that's going to be in my book one of these days. And they say that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I was on a podcast, and the guy that was interviewing me it said that he was also an independent publisher. And it was just like another one of those hallelujah moments. And I was like, well, tell me more about it. And he sent me a package on what he did and how he guided the whole process. And I was just like, yeah, I want to do this. It's time. And I went from May to October until I handed in my first draft. This was 2022. And I told him I need accountability. So like, I need to have a call set with you every week, whether I take it or I just use that time to write, because I think the hardest part for me, at least, of writing is finding the time and keeping it in your calendar.
Right.
And then once you're on a roll, you start wanting more time. And I would, write on weekends, and I'd have my husband take the girls out, and I would just spend like 3 or 4 hours straight writing. I said, literally, if I had a USB port in my head, I could have put a thumb drive there and downloaded it straight to the computer. And so I handed it in October. And the last chapter of my book is about the future of storytelling in like the era of AI. And this was the very early days. Now, I wrote this chapter, and it's disclosed in there. At first, I wrote it with Jasper, which was one before ChatGPT.
Right.
It was like this writing thing where you could give it prompts, and it would write bits and bobs. And I had to ask a lot of different questions to be able to coherently put something together. And then 2 weeks after I handed in my first draft, OpenAI launched and ChatGPT launched, and suddenly everyone was buzzing about it. And I said to my publisher, I think I need to rewrite this chapter using ChatGPT. I have a feeling it's going to be around for a while. And he's like, I have a feeling you're right. And it was GPT-3 at the time.
Wow.
Generative pre-trained transformer 3, GPT. And the question really was around, like, will I have a job?
Yeah.
Are you going to take over? And his answer, and coming back to something you said earlier, is you as humans, what makes you human is your ability to tell stories and to share stories. We can only emulate that. We can only gather stories. We can only make things up, but you're the ones that experienced it. And that, to me, is the biggest piece of advice I can give anyone when they're pitching a business or they're speaking and they're trying to get people to do something, buy something, partner with them. Make it your own. Find those moments of the stories that we were talking about before. Where did you come up with this idea? That's usually the first question I will ask a company. Where did you come up with the idea for this? And usually there's a great story there. Sometimes it's boring. Sometimes it's too long. And then we'll just draw from the pieces to create the origin story.
Right.
But that is what people are going to remember and take away with them. And like Seth Godin said, nobody's going to remember a bullet from PowerPoint, but they will remember a story that you told
100%
about your life and about how you came up with things. So
yeah, it's so interesting. Do you have another book in you think?
Probably. When I first gave my publisher the outline, he's like, listen, either you're going to have an 800 page book or you're going to write a trilogy about this. And I said, okay. And he's like, what are you most passionate about? I said, well, storytelling for startups has got to be the place that I start, because that's but I'll probably write one storytelling for sales at some point. And I have to be inspired in order to write. There has to be something that moves me. I'll probably write storytelling in the age of AI. That'll probably be before, and it might be a smaller book. It might be just articles. I'm not sure yet. I'm working on that too. And then I work with people on personal brand storytelling. I have a workshop that I teach called the X Factor, which helps with that. We were talking before about your talents and your skills, identifying your talents, identifying your skills, your unique talents and skills, and then finding the points in time in your career that those have come into play, like the proof points. And then from that, creating what I call the X Factor statement, or, who you are in a professional sense. And this can become your LinkedIn profile. This can become how you introduce yourself at networking events. But people don't really and a job interview, somebody else says, so tell me about yourself. Right. And usually people rattle off, well, I come from here, I went to school here, I did that. And they don't find like the story, the essence. And you can start from anywhere when you have a question like that.
Right.
And so I really want to help people find that power in them. So we'll see.
On the personal branding, the clients, are they mainly, obviously job seekers would be
that's a big one.
Yeah. And then
that's a big one.
I would think
job
entrepreneurs that are going out on their own.
Job seekers, but also a lot of times organizations will bring me in to work with their employees because they want to give them this gift of being able to present themselves. So I gave this workshop for 120 financial leaders, director and above, for a big hardware company. It was in Houston. And we worked on it, and then people were creating their X Factor statement. And then a guy came up to me at the end and he's like, I've been with the company for 26 years. And this is the first time I have actually took a good hard look at what the value is that I bring. And I'm amazed. And I've never really let myself have that. And that was such a powerful thing because we go through life, we do the things we're supposed to do as people, as parents, as kids, as employees, and we don't always stop to give ourselves the credit. It's much easier to criticize ourselves for things that went wrong. And here's this guy, 26 years, and he never realized what he has contributed to this organization. And it can be for talks about promotions or raise or retention. It can be for talks, new jobs people explore, but there's so many different ways to introduce yourself.
Right. Yeah. No, I love that. I think you mentioned it earlier, but so you're working at the graduate studies program at Stanford University.
Graduate School of Business, GSB.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
that was last year's pivot.
Yeah.
And another serendipitous moment too, because last summer I had already been in touch with my manager there about another role that didn't pan out. And she's like, let's stay in touch. With your background in communications and coaching, there might be other opportunities. And exactly a year ago, pretty much to the day, somebody sent me a job listing on LinkedIn as a communications coach at Stanford GSB. And I looked, and it was from the woman, Mary, who's now my manager, who I had been in touch with. And I'm like, hey, I just saw this. Is this something I should submit to? She's like, absolutely. The deadline's on July 1st, a year ago.
Right.
And I'm like, great. I was in Greece giving a keynote. I'm like, I'll work on it on the flight back. And I did. And I went through like 4 or 5 interviews, simulations, and I was hired. And I absolutely fell in love with the work. First of all, Stanford is an incredible place, and GSB is even more incredible because these are grad students who are in their mid 20s to early 30s, I'd say the ranges, with probably the average being 28, a little younger, a little older. And these are extremely bright people from many different backgrounds that come from finance, that come from investment banking, VC. Many want to be entrepreneurs or already are entrepreneurs. And they're thrown into this incredible program, incredible community. And they come to me to do sessions on whatever communication issues they're struggling with. So it could be from how to speak up in class, which accounts often for 30% of their grade, whether they're called on, they call it cold calling, somebody will randomly call on them, or whether they put their hand up to share a thought. And there's a lot of fear of not looking good or saying something that's not smart that comes with that. 2, networking. 2, drum roll. Number 1, how do I introduce myself and how do I create meaningful small talk?
Right.
And what stunned me was what a struggle that was. And I realized that it's a combination between most of them went to college during COVID,
Right.
then most of them worked remotely for the first part of their career, and they've grown up with screens.
Yeah.
So the combination between these 3 things have taken away that natural art of small talk and of connecting to people that you just connect with in the office or connect with on campus.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, wow, this is a big struggle. So I started working on, okay, so ask the person a question. Well, after I ask, so what about the weather and all that? I have nothing else to say. And I'm like, well, just last week you had your section Olympics and you had midterms, and then you have this trip coming up and you have this class. And so why don't you talk about that and see what they have to say? And then from there, you're going to discover points that you have in common or that you don't have in common. And I looked at it. It's like crocheting. If you've ever crocheted, it's like one loop connects to the next, and it starts to form an actual something,
Right.
a doily, a beanie,
Right.
a blanket. And it blew my mind at first. It blew my mind that these brilliant young people had such, I don't know if I can say, can I say handicap? It's
Yeah.
really like, of being able to have these communications.
Right.
It was amazing to see how they came out of their shell throughout the year. And I get to go back in the fall. I'm very excited. So my first year babies are now second year. So they're
Yeah.
the big men and women on campus. And then all the newbies will come in.
Yeah.
So I'll get to have that experience now of the
Nice.
older ones that get to work on the more, now they're interviewing for
Yeah.
jobs and pitching their startups. And then the younger ones come in and all their fears. So it's like you get to do it again, all over again. And
Yeah.
it's just so much fun. It's so much
Fantastic.
fun.
No, I love that. Talking about undergraduates now, a question I ask all my guests is I'd love to help this group of people. Young adults are graduating college. Now they're going out for their first post-college professional job. What advice do you have for them, Donna, as they begin their professional career and go out for that first job?
Oh, wow. So many things. First of all, never do something because that's what's expected of you. Because your parents said you need to study law, or you think that investment banking is the way to go if you don't love it. Steve Jobs said the only way to do good work is to love what you do. And it's so true.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't wake up every day excited about what was ahead and what I do, it would be like Walking Dead. So you have to fall in love. And if you don't find it at the first job, that's okay. It's okay to switch directions, and you'll take that experience from the job that wasn't great, and you'll take what you learned there to the next one. And by the way, never stay at a toxic job. Never stay at it is better to quit and have a little hole on your resume than to stay with something that demoralizes you and makes you feel like crap. And I did meet a few students that stayed in this horrible settings. Don't do it to yourself. It's not worth mental health. So that's one thing. Find what you love to do. And there's this Japanese figure called Ikigai, which it looks like a flower. If you've ever seen it, you could probably put it in the show notes. So it's this circle with concentric circles, and it's made up of what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. And where all four of those circles meet is your Ikigai, your reason for being. If you can find your Ikigai, and you have to have all four, because if you're doing something that you love, but you're not getting paid, you're always going to be in this sense of like missing out. Or if you're getting paid a lot, but you're not loving what you're doing, you're going to feel like you sold your soul to the devil. And you don't want to do that either. And we're in an era where, thanks to AI, it's very easy to become an entrepreneur. It's very easy to own a business. It's very easy to fulfill dreams. And a lot of the workforce is going to be eliminated.
Right.
So this is going to force us to get very creative about what we do for a living. I think probably whatever my girls end up doing for a living hasn't even been created yet.
Right.
Who knew being a YouTuber and an influencer was a thing 10 years ago? So always go for the unexplored, untapped, even, and don't let the voices get you down.
Right.
I'm like, no, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. Look for what you love. Look for what you can support yourself doing, and find something with meaning.
Yeah.
Meaning for you, meaning for the world, meaning for people. That's always going to give you that sense of like, and what's meaningful to you may not be meaningful. I had a conversation with my CPA before, and I was trying to like breeze through this story. He's like, Donna, I'm a very methodical person. Let me go step by step. And I did. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he really loves what he does. He's really good at what he does. I would die if I had to be a CPA. I would literally shrivel up and die. But thank goodness there's someone who loves it and is methodical and can do this for me. And I don't have to worry about it.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. Anybody can be a leader at a company, whether you have people reporting to you or not. But those younger adults that want to take that career path and they get promoted to become a first-time manager, what advice do you have for them, Donna, as they begin that leadership journey?
Human to human. I've never worked at a large organization. I've worked with large organizations. And I've always seen two main types of managers. One type that everything is chaos. They're mean. They're demanding. everyone's scared of them, and things aren't necessarily getting done better. And there's a lot of dissent and a lot of resentment. And then there are those that are just born leaders that are with the troops down in the trenches, and they're one of the people, and they see each and every one of their employees. They know them, they speak to them, they treat them like humans, they treat them with appreciation. The deepest wish people have is to be seen and acknowledged. That is the deepest wish. Know people's names, know their birthdays, know what they love, take note of things that they say, and make them feel special. I mean, when someone senses things about you without you saying it, and then they give you a present, it's just like, you're like, oh my God, how did you know that? It's such a special moment because they feel seen. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a big grand gesture. It's just taking notes. So take notes. Oh, Marcia mentioned that she loves this brand of chocolate, and you happen to see that and you just picked it. Hey, Marcia, I saw this chocolate the other day, and I remember you said you like what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
And so many small things can make people feel so big.
Yeah.
And the return is massive.
Yeah, totally agree.
These people will like live and die for their managers because they're that devoted, and they'll follow them wherever they go, and they'll do whatever it takes to grow. And that to me is amazing.
Yeah. No, I love that, Donna. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. I was honored that you came on the podcast today.
Thank you so much. It was fun.
Yeah.
It's time to flew.
I love it. Thanks again. Appreciate you.
Me too. Thanks.
I just don't know what to say about Donna because there's so many freaking things I could say.
Oh, man, she was amazing.
Oh, my God. Starting out at 7 years old with her first business, Hearts the Clown, dressing up as a clown for kids' parties. Then she rebranded to Rainbow the Clown with a new outfit. So many good things, talking about public speaking and storytelling. Nobody remembers a bullet point from PowerPoint, but they remember a story about your life, which is so true. Also about public speaking, she said excitement and fear are basically the same thing. Excitement has better branding.
Yeah, it's great.
And I had heard of this before, but I didn't know the name. It's the Ikigai concept. It's career advice centered on finding the intersection of what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. I thought that was fascinating. Never stay in toxic environments at work. Better to have a gap in your resume, she said, than damage your mental health. She teaches at, the Stanford Graduate School of Business, and talking about how they're, brilliant students in their mid-20s struggling with basic small talk and networking because it attributes to the, college, COVID, and high school experience and remote work and screen-dominated upbringing. So it's really interesting. But she's a fascinating person. Her family, her husband, and her created a family crest. I'm not going to even attempt the Latin of it, but the motto is, I will either find a way or I will make a way.
Isn't that great?
It's perfect motto for entrepreneurs, and it's central to her business philosophy in terms of helping them. So, yeah, I mean, Donna, GPT, and, looking at pitch decks for companies. She's a fascinating person. Fascinating.
It was great, and you hit on several of the bullet points I had, but I still have even more bullet points. I just took page after page of notes during her interview. She was interesting in one aspect, is that we talk a lot about zigzags that go on in your career as you're going through life, and how you're not, or very rarely, in a position from your college degree. Her college degree was pretty much spot on. It wasn't exactly what she ended up doing, but it was certainly there. She did do a couple of pivots, and one of the interesting pivots that she had was she had a stint in theater therapy.
And, right, drama therapy. I totally forgot about that. Yeah.
And she had a stint in that, and she thought, man, I really, really like this, but doggone it, I'm never going to find a job in it. So let's move on to something else. But the other stuff that she moved on to was pretty closely related to that. So she didn't have a zig or a zag. She just had a couple of course corrections, and I thought that was really good. One of the little tiny course corrections that she had to have, we bump into this every once in a while. When you base your business on something, and all of a sudden, completely out of your control, that thing is no longer a thing. And so, or is a completely different thing. So she writes a book, includes a chapter on AI, submits it for publication, and as soon as she submits it, ChatGPT gets released, and all of a sudden, everything that she wrote in her book is irrelevant. And she had to bring the book back, or at least that chapter, bring that chapter back, rewrite that whole chapter. And you know, you got to think, if you're writing anything about technology, especially how technology is moving so fast today, and things in AI today is the wild, wild west. It's hard to imagine that you could write anything and not have it completely irrelevant in just weeks after you wrote it. And that certainly happened to her. She got out of it okay. It was an amazing interview. I just really loved it.
Yeah. You know, Joe, I usually don't do this, but I interviewed a person high up in the Catholic Church. I haven't sent it to you yet, but it was amazing. I found out how they, he told me how they make holy water. Do you know how they make holy water?
How do they make holy water, Jeff?
They boil the hell out of it.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Corporate Couch. If you enjoy the podcast, I would love for you to take 2 minutes out of your day to rate us 5 stars and write a review. Please join me next week to learn from another great leader sharing their professional journey and insights.